Have you ever noticed something unsettling? The moment you begin to truly transform, the people around you start to feel uncomfortable. They don't say it directly, of course. Instead, they disguise their discomfort behind jokes, wrap their judgment in false concern, or let an awkward silence fill the space when you speak about something deeper. But beneath all these masks, the truth is brutally simple. Your mental evolution threatens their comfort zone, and no one enjoys being forced to confront their own stagnation. Perhaps you're experiencing this exact phenomenon right now. You've started thinking differently, acting with intention, questioning beliefs you once accepted without hesitation. And suddenly, you find yourself feeling isolated, misunderstood, quietly judged by those who once stood beside you. Here's what no one prepared you for, what nature understood with piercing clarity. This isolation is the price you pay for building a truly powerful mind. Not just any kind of strength, but a strength so authentic, so uncompromising, that it makes others deeply uncomfortable. It frightens them. It exposes, without a single word, the fragility of those still living on autopilot. But why does this happen? Because a genuinely powerful mind is a threat to collective mediocrity. When you decide to think independently, create your own values, and abandon the comfortable illusion of ready-made truths, you become dangerous. Dangerous to the system that depends on conformity. Dangerous to others who've settled for less. And most importantly, dangerous to your former self, the version of you that accepted limitations as reality. This video is not entertainment. It's a call to arms, a challenge issued directly to you. It's not designed for those seeking comfort, nor for those wanting easy answers wrapped in motivation. This is for you, the one exhausted by being held hostage to your own insecurities. The one standing on the edge of an internal rupture, ready to build something unshakable, a mind that cannot be manipulated, a mind that terrifies because it refuses to bend. If you're ready for this path, a lonely, brutal, but absolutely transformative journey, then stay, because what Nietzsche's philosophy has to teach you will confront everything you thought you knew. It will disturb you, but it can also set you free. And after this, you will never think the same way again. The birth of strength. Why chaos is your greatest teacher. Nietzsche was not just a philosopher. He was a surgeon of the human soul. Someone who possessed the courage to stare into the abyss of existence and not merely face it, but dive headfirst into its depths. And it's precisely in that abyss, in that inner chaos most people desperately avoid, that he discovered the source of genuine strength. For Nietzsche, transformation doesn't happen in peace, stability, or order. It happens in pain, in the fall, in chaos. He wrote one of the most powerful lines in philosophy. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. This isn't poetic metaphor. This is psychological diagnosis. It means that if you want to forge an unshakable mind, you must abandon the childish fantasy that it will come through comfort, cheap motivation, or positive affirmations repeated in the mirror. True strength is born when you face suffering without fleeing. When you stop begging life to be easier and start demanding yourself to be stronger. Think about the moments when you grew the most. Was it when everything was perfect? Or was it when you were shattered, lost, directionless, forced to rebuild yourself with your bare hands, piece by painful piece? Nietzsche believed that suffering wasn't a mistake in existence, but rather its primary engine. He didn't romanticize pain like some masochist. He faced it as a tool, a crucible for transformation. And if you can change your relationship with pain, with failure, with loneliness, you begin to forge something rare in this world, an indomitable spirit. This is precisely where the world begins to be disturbed by you, because while the masses flee from chaos, you learn to walk within it. While others beg for normality and comfort, you create greatness from the raw materials of suffering. But this transformation demands a brutal break with everything you were taught about strength. Being strong isn't about smiling constantly. It's not about fake emotional control or toxic positivity. Being strong means enduring the unbearable and emerging on the other side more dangerous, more alive, more real. But Nietzsche knew that chaos alone isn't enough. You can be destroyed by it if you lack an inner center, an anchor in the storm. That's why the next phase of this journey is the most decisive moment in Nietzschean philosophy. When he kills God and places upon your shoulders the full weight of existential responsibility. Because when there's no longer a heaven to look up to, it's within you that the universe must be born. If this content resonates with you, click subscribe. Your support allows us to continue this work. The death of God, when all excuses die. When Nietzsche declared God is dead, he wasn't celebrating. He was issuing a warning that most people still fail to understand today. What he killed wasn't a divine figure itself. He killed the illusion, the comforting lie that there's a higher authority managing everything. The illusion that there's a predetermined plan, a ready-made meaning, a purpose handed down from above. The death of God is the death of every excuse you've ever made. And that's terrifying, because until that moment, it was easy to outsource responsibility for your life. It was comforting to believe that everything happens for a reason, that suffering is part of some divine plan, that there's a greater good justifying everything in the end. Nietzsche violently tears away this veil. He looks you directly in the face and says, you are alone. There is no ready-made meaning. You are the creator now. This is where the true construction of a powerful mind begins. Because most people collapse when they realize they're alone facing chaos, without a manual, without guarantees, with no one to blame but themselves. But those who possess the courage to face this reality without crumbling, they begin to forge an unshakable consciousness. With the death of God, Nietzsche pushes you into the abyss of radical freedom. You must not follow commandments written by others. You must create your own values. You must not obey external authorities. You must surpass yourself constantly. This is the birth of brutal autonomy, and with it comes the weight, the crushing responsibility. Everything now depends on you. There's no more absolution from sin. There's no more salvation from suffering. Either you build yourself or you sink into meaninglessness. But here's the secret that changes everything. This freedom that terrifies you is also the greatest source of power you can possibly possess. When you truly understand that no one is coming to save you, something within you awakens. A fire that compels you to rise even while bleeding. That forces you to think for yourself, feel for yourself, act not because someone said it's right, but because you decided it aligns with your values. It's in this rupture with existential crutches that Nietzsche prepares the ground for something even more magnificent. The emergence of a new way of being, a type of human who doesn't live according to the rules of the herd, who doesn't need approval or permission to exist, a being who creates their own morality, who constantly surpasses their own limits, who lives as a creator rather than a creation, a being that terrifies the weak because it forces them to see themselves as they truly are, small, fearful, living borrowed lives. This being has a name. Nietzsche called it the Übermensch, the Overman, and understanding this concept is essential if you want to build a mind so strong that nothing can break it. The Übermensch, becoming the creator of your reality. Nietzsche didn't believe in the slow, passive evolution of humanity. He believed in rupture, in radical transformation, in creative destruction. That's why he conceived the idea of the Übermensch, the Overman. This isn't about a superhero with mystical powers. The Übermensch is a being who has overcome everything that binds the ordinary person. Guilt, blind obedience, herd morality, the desperate need for acceptance. The Übermensch doesn't seek to be accepted by society. He doesn't ask permission to exist authentically. He creates his own internal laws and lives by them faithfully, even if that puts him against the entire world. And that's exactly why his mind becomes unbreakable. It's not built on the shifting sands of others' expectations. It doesn't need external approval to validate its existence. It's self-sufficient. It feeds on its own will to power, that deep impulse to shape reality according to one's own vision. This is the central point that changes everything. The Übermensch doesn't adapt to the world. He imposes meaning on the world. He doesn't seek comfort and security. He seeks greatness and authenticity. He doesn't ask, is this socially acceptable? He asks, is this worthy of who I'm becoming? This fundamental shift in perspective transforms everything. Because when you start seeing yourself as a creator rather than a servant, the way you think, act, and feel undergoes a complete metamorphosis. You stop being a passive recipient of life and become its active author. But here's the truth no one wants to tell you. Becoming this kind of being requires profound sacrifice. You will have to kill parts of yourself that still beg for approval from the crowd. You will have to face the searing pain of not belonging anywhere. You will have to bear the crushing weight of building your identity from scratch, without guarantees, without pats on the back, without applause from an audience. And most people cannot handle this burden. They give up before they truly begin. They run back to the false safety of ready-made beliefs, comfortable dogmas and rules that someone else wrote for them. They choose the cage, because freedom is too demanding. The path to the Übermensch is profoundly lonely, and Nietzsche knew this from lived experience. He himself lived on the margins of society, chronically misunderstood, called mad, isolated from the very world he was trying to liberate. But it was in that isolation that he found his freedom, his authentic voice. This is what you must understand if you choose this path. The stronger your mind becomes, the further you drift from the masses. The higher you rise, the more you disturb those still comfortable in mediocrity. The construction of the Übermensch is the most brutal and transformative process anyone can undertake, because it requires you to destroy everything that isn't authentically yours. Everything imposed on you by a sick culture, by a society that rewards obedience and punishes authenticity. And only after this necessary destruction can you begin to build something real. But this construction doesn't happen amidst the crowd and their constant chatter. It happens in silence, in voluntary withdrawal, in the deep solitude that separates the strong from the weak. The solitude of the strong, walking alone through the desert. If there's something no one tells you about the path of mental strength, it's this brutal truth. The stronger you become, the lonelier you feel. And it's not because you isolate yourself by choice. It's because the world simply doesn't know what to do with you anymore. Nietzsche spoke clearly about this. The free spirit, the one who breaks away from common morality, who refuses to accept easy truths, who thinks independently, inevitably distances themselves from the herd. And that distancing hurts like nothing else. But that pain is necessary because real growth requires space. And you cannot grow while being tied to the expectations of others, constantly adjusting yourself to fit their comfort. Most people live within an invisible herd where every thought is policed by social pressure. Every action is measured by others' reactions. You've grown accustomed to walking in a group, thinking like the group, feeling secure because there are people around you echoing your beliefs. But what Nietzsche proposes is the complete opposite. He tears you away from that false comfort and throws you into the desert. In that desert there are no applause, no praise, no guide holding your hand. There's only you. Your doubts, your traumas, your fears, your overwhelming desire to give up and return to the comfortable numbness. And that's where the real test begins. Because what will most people do when faced with this desert? They will run back to the herd as fast as possible. They will hide again behind their social masks. They will pretend they don't feel what they feel, don't think what they think, don't see what they see. But you, if you truly want to become someone that nothing can break, will have to stay in that desert. You will have to endure the deafening silence that reveals who you really are beneath all the conditioning. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." That's the essence of this entire philosophy, the ownership of oneself, the rarest and most powerful achievement anyone can attain in this lifetime. Because when you truly possess yourself, when you own your thoughts, values, and choices completely, no one else can control you. No one else gets to dictate your worth. And no one else can bring you down. But this self-possession comes with the heavy weight of loneliness. You will lose people you thought would be in your life forever. You will be chronically misunderstood. You will hear that you're arrogant, strange, distant, cold. They will try desperately to pull you back into the mold you've broken. They will call you crazy, selfish, insensitive. But that is the price of refusing to be domesticated. It's the price of not living for applause. It's the price of not becoming a mirror reflecting others' needs and expectations. Here's the raw truth that will either liberate or devastate you. If you cannot stand loneliness, you are not ready for freedom. Because all real freedom comes with abandonment. Abandonment of emotional crutches, of comfortable illusions, of utilitarian friendships that served only to keep you small. That's why Nietzsche saw solitude as a privilege, a sacred battlefield where the true self finally has space to emerge from beneath the layers of social conditioning. But this free mind, this elevated spirit, doesn't just walk alone through the world. It begins to see what others refuse to see. And with that vision comes the second inevitable effect of your transformation, the confrontation with collective mediocrity. The danger of collective mediocrity. Why the herd attacks? Nietzsche didn't fear tyrants, authoritarian leaders, or declared oppressors. What he feared and denounced with philosophical fury was the subtle and corrosive power of collective mediocrity. that invisible system that keeps everyone leveled down, that punishes those who dare to think differently, that rewards obedience and disguises cowardice as virtue. True tyranny, according to Nietzsche, doesn't come from above, from some dictator imposing rules. It comes from the sides, from the crowd that demands you remain small, so they don't have to face their own potential for growth. And that's exactly what happens when you start to stand out. When your mind becomes sharper, your spirit firmer, your presence more uncomfortable, you begin to disturb the equilibrium. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something rare, breaking the mold that keeps everyone else trapped. Society hates those who break molds. Collective mediocrity cannot tolerate individual brilliance, because that brilliance exposes the darkness of ordinary existence. Nietzsche called this slave morality, a moral system built by those who, unable to achieve greatness themselves, decided to invert all values. They transformed strength into arrogance, ambition into selfishness, independence into coldness. And with this inversion, they created a moral framework that protects the weak and condemns the strong. But make no mistake about their motivations. It's not out of compassion for the suffering. It's out of resentment toward those who refuse to suffer in silence. Because the weak don't actually want to be saved or elevated. They want the strong to be destroyed, brought down to their level. That's why when you start to liberate yourself from their expectations, they begin to attack you. Sometimes directly with harsh words. Sometimes subtly with disapproving looks, awkward silences, or cutting irony. But the message is always clear. Come back to the group. You're making us feel inadequate. And you are, unintentionally, just by being authentically who you are. Nietzsche understood that most people live in a state of paralyzing conformity, an existence shaped by fear, guilt, and blind obedience to invisible rules. Anyone who questions this state is automatically seen as a threat to the collective peace. But don't be fooled by their tactics. Mediocrity doesn't attack with direct force. It attacks with numbers, with consensus, with the crushing weight of repetition. It will try to make you doubt yourself at every turn. It will make you think you're wrong for not fitting in. It will use every social resource available, from shame to complete exclusion, to make you lower your head and conform. This is the moment when most people give up on their transformation, because they cannot bear to be seen as the strange one, the difficult one, the arrogant one who thinks they're better than everyone else. But Nietzsche would give you a different name, necessary. Because while the world revolves around recycled ideas, manufactured desires, and comfortable truths that never challenge anyone, it's the strong individual who brings the necessary discomfort for something new to be born. Your difference is the spark of transformation, but it's also the primary target of resistance. Being mentally strong, thinking freely, living autonomously, all of this constitutes an act of war against collective mediocrity. And like any war, it requires preparation. It requires weapons. Not physical weapons, but mental ones. Psychological armor that cannot be penetrated by the herd's judgment. The price and the power, what you gain by becoming unbreakable. You've made it this far. That already sets you apart from the vast majority. Most people would have closed this video at the first provocation. They would have run away at the first moment of discomfort. They would have turned it off the instant they realized this isn't content designed to stroke their ego with false motivation. This is a call to action. A call specifically for those who are ready to let go of comfortable illusions and face reality with eyes wide open. Because building a mind so strong that it becomes feared isn't just a choice you make once. It's a continuous renunciation, a constant sacrifice. You will lose things. You will lose friendships that were based on superficiality and mutual validation. You will lose opportunities that require submission to people or systems you cannot respect. You will lose the ability to be content with shallow pleasures and small thinking. But in exchange for these losses, you gain something infinitely more valuable, something that cannot be taken from you: integrity, clarity, presence. You will begin to notice that most people live in a waking sleep, going through the motions without ever truly thinking. And your lucidity,